Hello, everybody. Welcome to Braintunes with Archana. Archana Madhusudan, I have been introducing you to amazing educators. And today I have with me one such amazing personality whom you would like to know more about. Here I have with me Miss Priyadarshini Jacob, who's born in Bangalore, India, currently residing and working in Melbourne, Australia. She is a primary performing arts teacher who's completed her Master of Education, majoring in creative art therapy in 2001. She has had over 21 years of classroom teaching experience in both Papua New Guinea and Australia. She is the prodigal daughter of an acclaimed personality who has graced this platform earlier. Dr. Winston Jacob, Ambassador, Global University for Lifelong Learning, USA. He's an accredited mentor and coach, an International Coach Federation, USA. Talking about Ms. Jacob, she is an author who has 2 educational books published by Oxford University Press for Papua New Guinea literacy development to her credit. She is passionate about the teaching profession as a whole, building resilience in children, metacognition in the classroom, arts education, and the power of peer learning from each other. These are her fortes. Ms. Jacob has facilitated many workshops on communicating effectively with children and believes that teaching is a very powerful and life-changing profession. Welcome, Ms. Jacob.
Thank you very much, Archana. Lovely to be on your show.
We would like to hear about Ms. Jacob in her own words. Tell us about yourself.
Yes, so as you said, I spent a lot of my years in Papua New Guinea. When I was 4, my parents took me from India and took me to Papua New Guinea, basically to give my brother and I the opportunity to have an education and a life. And it was a really big sacrifice they had to make when they had to then send us at a young age off to boarding school. So when I was 11, I came to Australia to boarding school, and I spent 5 years in boarding school and then came to Melbourne to start my teaching career. And I was passionate about teaching, I'd say, from maybe year 2, year 3, where I would line up my toys and I would mark the roll and everyone had a name. And along the way, I kind of, around grade 6, thought I was going to possibly be a physiotherapist or a show jumper, and I went into all those different things. But in high school, I came back to, yes, I want to be a primary teacher, and I absolutely love my profession. I love being able to touch the lives of children, and so then touch the future.
So the love story is very old.
Yes, very old.
Yes,
yeah.
I guess once a teacher, always a teacher. And yes, venturing into having different ideas as youngsters, as teens, because we are undecided as to what will suit my palette, what will I fit into. So we try to experiment with several things, or maybe we have several ideas. But once we understand what our niche is, I think there is no looking back to it, Ms. Jacob.
No, definitely not. Definitely
right.
Not.
So, Ms. Jacob, talking about education, being an educator, I completely understand the love and passion that you have for teaching. And when it comes to primary grades, I think this is the most lovely and important part of being an educator, right? Yes. Because we are laying the foundation stones in the lives of these individuals, and how an individual is shaped in that tender age determines what he will be as an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I 100% agree that when you can touch these young minds, when their minds are like sponges, it's so, so powerful.
So, ma'am, I would like to understand it is in fact an irrefutable fact that 21st century children cannot benefit from 20th century teaching skills, right? So I don't think what we have been learning throughout, or the approach to teaching which was in the 20th century, is going to be of much help to children today, because the generation is completely different. The Gen Z children have a completely different mindset. And so the approach of educators and teachers also has to change with it. Your view about it?
I agree. I think the children of today are very different. One major difference we can see is that they are a digital generation, and we are what are known as the digital immigrants, but they are born digital, and so their minds function quite differently. And I think it's very good when you as a teacher can somehow bring digital learning into the classroom as much as you can. However, having said that, there are basic skills and things that children have to be able to do that are not digital. So finding that balance is really important as well.
Agree. I completely agree to that, ma'am. And I think the life skills which need to be embedded in children are acquired through various means and not just the digital resources. Yes, exactly. The 21st century skills like your critical thinking, problem solving, all said and done, when they are integrated with academic learning, I think that is where we are grooming a well-rounded adult. Right, ma'am. So, ma'am, I would like to understand your journey, because I was watching a couple of your interviews and I loved the tagline which you gave in one of your interviews, from crisis to conquest. So tell me about your life from crisis to conquest. How did you achieve this?
Yes, so in that interview, I was speaking about how after I'd finished my teaching degree, I then traveled and went back to Papua New Guinea and started my teaching career there. And it was wonderful. It was the best place to start my teaching career. And, but however, going back to New Guinea then brought crisis into my life, because I did go through some fairly traumatic experiences. And then having started my young teaching career, but then having gone through massive crisis, as I mentioned in that interview, and going through being abducted and being taken away into a village and experiencing the shock of that, and then carrying on being able to teach and carrying on being able to grow. I think all of that, like I mentioned in the interview, started with a very strong foundation. And so for me, spirituality, principles, values, all of that are core things that helped me to move from crisis to conquest, the very first thing. And I think we have to embed that very much in children as well. And them having spirituality, values, principles, all of that are very good grounding to support you in whatever life brings to you. And, you know, often we talk about nowadays, some children are what you call cotton wool kids. It's like they're wrapped in cotton wool and they can't manage crisis. And the people in their lives aren't allowing them to experience crisis and experience failure. Failure is so important. Like in my classroom, when children make a mistake, they say, yay, I made a mistake, because it's a good thing to celebrate that I made a mistake. And that whole idea that, you know, mistakes, failure, whatever it is, things going wrong, you can either choose to use them as bricks and steps to take you further, or just put all those bricks on top of your head and bring yourself lower. But that choice, you have to teach the children how to do that. And so then back to in my life, I had to learn also for myself how to, move on. And like, I mean, to be abducted and go through what I did, I know as being an Indian woman, how often that is viewed as the most shameful thing. And you curl up in a ball and want to die. But there's so many things. I'm alive. I've survived. I have that choice to move on from survive to thrive. But it's me who has to do that. It's me who has to put myself into that space. And it's a headspace thing. The mind is so powerful. I think a lot, I mean, I don't know how it is in India, but in Australia, mental illness, mental health is a huge problem. So I think our minds and training ourselves to control our minds and understand our mind and understand how we work and how we think and why we think the way we think, and facing the things that bring us conflict, or facing the struggles we've gone through without trying to hide them and shame them and push them away, are all part of this process to take us from crisis to conflict. I know I've said a lot in this short little time, but there's so much I want to say. Yeah.
That is so very deep, Miss Jacob. I can completely understand where you're coming from. And like you said, the mindset, the shock, the shame, the guilt, although being a victim, you are treated as the perpetrator or whatever. You are made to feel guilty for what has happened to you, right? Yeah. So, but then I guess there has been a change in mindset in India as well. And people are waking up to the fact that you need to process this, and mental health is a real issue. It's not just that somebody is throwing a tantrum and that's the reason that they consider him to have some mental issues, right? There are problems you need to deal with effectively. Otherwise, they are like skeletons in a closet. You never know when they will tumble out, right? And they will disrupt your whole existence. So I guess addressing an issue and having that strength to overcome it, to tackle it, to understand what it is, and take one step at a time and ultimately reach the pinnacle of success. I guess you are an inspiration, Ms. Jacob. I'm so glad that I invited you on Braintunes with Archana, because mental health has always taken a back seat, at least here in the Indian scenario. But in the past couple of years, mental health issues are a major focus, and teachers and parents are actually understanding that if a child is showing some symptoms of distress, or he is being withdrawn, not his normal self, there must be something which needs to be addressed, right? So those little minds are traumatized with something. We need to get to the root of the problem. Otherwise, it's just going to take strong roots and branch out into a strong tree, making, ruining their future is what I can actually say. And in the Western countries, I guess the mental health issues, especially if you look at the US and all, the shootouts at schools and all, these are terrible experiences. So how do these juveniles get to that stage where they become so very violent? What might be the cause behind it? Obviously, I don't think anybody is born with that violent streak in him or her. Then why do they change into such individuals full of hatred, right? So understanding this is a very important issue, and having experienced that trauma of being abducted and then again resurfacing to be a teacher of great repute, I think this is a wonderful thing. So tell us more about what is creative art therapy, ma'am.
Yeah, so creative art therapy, if I use the example of my story so far. So yeah, I went through that terrible experience in Papua New Guinea. And then from there, my dad, who is so passionate about lifelong learning, didn't let me sit still. He said, go and study, go do your master's. And I'm really grateful that he pushed me to do that, because I chose to do creative arts therapy. And it was so, so powerful for me, because creative arts therapy is where you use the arts, because in creative arts therapy, we'll say all art, all creation, whatever you are doing comes from within. So whatever is within can come out, and it's through art that it can, because when you are being artistic, you are connecting with your creative side. And so as you connect with your creative side, whatever is within can come out. Art therapy, as in visual art therapy, then drama therapy, music therapy, understanding group dynamics, and all these wonderful, wonderful tools. So the final part you have to do is you have to be able to then take something in your life that's been your grief and express it and present it and perform it, or as a project artistically. So, and our creative arts therapy facilitator, her words were always, trust the process, trust the process. And I think that that's what creative arts therapy is all about, that you go through this process and you trust that process, and somehow that process will help you process. And yeah, so I painted, I drew, I wrote about, I acted everything that I experienced. And then from there, the crisis that happened to you, it's not you, it happened to you, but it impacted you inside, then comes out and you are facing it. And as you face it, it's a very powerful thing, because you are able to then do what you want with it, you know, and put it in its place, rather than it taking over you and filling the spaces that it shouldn't.
Wonderful, Miss Jacob. So it is something like you take away the power from that fear which has been plaguing you when you are actually able to express yourself.
Yeah.
And not necessarily that this expression takes a verbal form. It can take many of the forms, like be it painting or music or any other thing. That's so very impactful, like you said, Ms. Jacob, because many people feel that there's only one way of expressing your sorrow, and that is venting it out, not necessary. So there are different ways and more creative ways which can actually heal your soul, is what I believe.
So, an example, when I was doing my unit on dance therapy, I was at that time waitressing in a restaurant, and one of my customers in the restaurant would always come and sit by himself and order his steak medium with pepper sauce, and I knew his order, and he'd just sit with the paper. And one day he just said to me, you know, there's nothing really much in my life. This is my life. And it turned out that his wife had passed away 5 years before. And I was working nearby to his house, and usually you wouldn't trust somebody to just go to their house, but I did trust him enough to go to his house, and his house was pretty much like in the same state since his wife had died. It's called mummification. So you leave everything since your partner passed away. And so her handbag was still there. Everything was still exactly where it was since the time for 5 years. And so I said to him, I'm studying about freeing people, and I need to try the things I'm learning. Can I try? And he said, yes, anything to change my world, that would be great. And so I did a lot of things, and they were so powerful. But one of the things I still remember was when I was doing my unit on dance therapy, and that there's this process called authentic movement, and the body stores memories that the mind doesn't connect with. And so you have to switch off the mind. You just have to switch it off, and you just have to tune into what your body wants to do. And then you start to move how your body wants to move. And I love it that he was so open, because I think that's a really big thing. You have to be open to do these things, you know, not look at it as something silly. But he was so open to anything, because I think he was in this stage where he just needed help and he didn't know what to do. And so he did this authentic movement. And I still remember in his lounge room, which was just this, like he was a librarian, and his wall was just filled with books, and this fireplace, and he was just whirling and dancing. And I just thought, he might fall into the fireplace. And he really had switched off his mind. And after that day, the next day, he said, can you come and rearrange my lounge room for me? And that was huge, because that was a step. And then probably about 6 months later, I popped in to see him, and he had boxes, and he was packing all his books into boxes. And he said, Darshini, I have just taken a job in another state. And he said, I'm going. So that was just like, wow, that's when I realized, and I was still studying at that time, creative arts therapy is so, so powerful. It transforms lives.
So that really gave me goosebumps, Ms. Jacob, because there are several people like this who have just shut down life owing to crippling grief, but they do require closure in order to move on. And when such therapies can actually open up things and give them a fresh lease of life, I think there is nothing nobler than this, Ms. Jacob.
Yeah. Yes.
Such a wonderful story to hear. And I guess there are many people out there. It's not just about, adults, youngsters are also undergoing a lot of trauma and need such therapies, need such educators who can actually assist them, understand what is it that they're going through. The first thing is they just don't understand what is happening to me, why am I like this, right? So like you said, I guess these therapies indeed, and what are these actually implemented in India, according to you, Ms. Jacob? Do we have any practitioners in India for such therapies to help people?
I'm not really sure, and I've never actually looked into if creative art therapy is taught. I don't know. I mean, here you go to university and you study it and you get a degree, but I'm not sure about in India. I've never looked into that. Yeah. Where you were talking about, first of all, that you have to be able to look at the child. And I did a talk recently on empathy, and I think empathy is so important. I mean, empathy from the teacher and the adults who are in the life of a child, that ability to empathize is so good for the child, because by empathizing, you are going to empower the child. I'll give you a perfect example of how you empathize just on the playground. Often children will come to you and say, this person did this to me. And you'll say, oh, you must feel sad. And then there's never a time that you're not going to hear more. Yes, da-di-da, da-di-da, da-di-da. Okay. And then that made you feel angry. Da, yes, da, la, 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 la. And in that process, they will solve it themselves, because you've just done the simple thing of empathizing. Happens all the time.
So true.
And
so very true.
Yeah, that's just a simple example of how empathy in daily life happens. But it's very easy to just say, oh, okay, you did that, say sorry, move on, and you just carry that anger and go away, but no, it's simple, but just trying to identify the feeling and saying, this is how you feel. If you're wrong, they'll correct you. They'll say, no, actually, I feel this. And that's good too, because then you're again helping them to connect with the emotion. And I think connecting with the emotion and knowing the emotion is really important. It is very important, again, to move from crisis to conflict.
That is so very meaningful in the context that usually when something happens, we just say, you're wrong, apologize. Maybe the child is pressurized because the teacher is telling or the parent is asking to apologize and may just apologize. Just lip sympathy, not actually feeling the emotion. And these suppressed emotions can snowball into something big later, right? So it is so very important that the child understands, or the child understands, okay, so the adult is understanding that I really am undergoing this pain or this emotion, and there's nothing wrong in expressing it. Right. Mm-hmm. So I guess, like you said, understanding the emotion and also being able to emote will help the children have a very balanced understanding of, and if this is taught at a very young age, I guess they will grow into beautiful adults.
Yeah, and emotionally intelligent adults, yeah?
100% emotional intelligence, because it's not only the IQ which we need to focus on, but the EQ, which plays a major role. And do you conduct workshops or training sessions for educators, Ms. Jacob?
Yes, I have. So I've done a course that, it's not my course. I was trained by they are an American, they wrote a book called How to Talk So Children Listen and How to Listen So Children Talk. So in 20 plus years ago, when I started my teaching career, I happened to pick that book up at an airport when I was traveling. And I'm so glad to have got that book when I was starting uni and starting to teach, because that book helped me until today. It really shaped all of my teaching. And when it talked about the very first thing, when you are acknowledging children's feelings, it's the very first thing it teaches you is empathy. And so, yes, I've done workshops with teachers and parents on how to talk so children listen and how to listen so children talk. But if anybody was wanting to read a book that is really good, and it has, I don't think those skills will change with time. I think those are, again, core things that you need to be able to do. So it's a book that I would recommend anybody to read.
That's a wonderful tip for aspiring effective teachers and parents also, I must say, Ms. Jacob, because see, there is no book on effective parenting, nor do we have a manual. Children don't come with manuals. We don't know how to, every child is different. So I guess we as adults, be it parents or educators, need to get into that mind space of the child and understand how does this child think, so that he is able to understand me better, or I am able to help him understand the world better, because they are confused with everything that is going on. They really don't know what to say, how to say, right? And if we are actually causing this child more problems by trying to be authoritative and just by trying to dictate us, this is what you should do, that is going to be more damaging rather than helping the children.
Yes, correct.
Right. So it was wonderful. And I guess the educators who are watching this interview would like to connect to you. I would be putting up your contacts, maybe your mail ID or your whatever social media connects that you have, so that educators can benefit from this immense knowledge that you have, Ms. Jacob. So
sure.
Educators, you will find all the descriptions in the link below this video. And it was lovely having you on Braintunes with Archana, Ms. Darshini Jacob. Any parting words that you would like to say to my audience?
I would just say live life to the fullest. Be grateful. Know that your mind is connected to your heart, which is connected to your actions, but it all starts there because that's the top. So really be careful with that and be aware of what's going on there because it's going to affect everything else. And yeah, spirituality first is the root for me. If you can get that right, everything else will flow.
Wonderful. In a nutshell, spirituality, understand your emotions. Do not be afraid to face your emotions and try to heal yourself. If required, reach out. And I think that is where you will grow from crisis to conquest. Thank you so much for this lovely interview, Ms. Jacob. Looking forward to having you again on Braintunes with Archana.
Thank you, Archana. Lovely to talk to you.
Good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.